everyone, this is Celine from Blue Calla Patterns. Welcome to video 3 for the Rose Gathered shoulder bag. Before we continue, we're going to finish the exterior assembly of our bag in this video. And before we start attaching our side panels to our accent panel, we need to mark the location for the other half of our magnetic snap or our turn lock on our accent panel. So you're going to use the accent panel pattern piece, and you're just going to make a mark where you have the magnetic snap or turn lock mark. Okay. And then we are going to take 2 side panels. So you should have 4 side panels and 2 accent panels, and hopefully before you fuse the fusible fleece you trimmed away the seam allowance. So I will set aside this for now. So I'm just going to show you how to assemble one, and then you're going to assemble the other set exactly the same way. So you're going to start by lining up the straight edge of the side panel with one of the longer edges of your accent panel, and you're going to clip them together, and then you're going to sew them together. I forgot to get my Wonder clips, so we're just using these little alligator clips. So you're going to sew this together with 3/8 of an inch seam allowance, and then you're going to press this away from the accent panel, and then you're going to top stitch the seam allowance here along the edge of the side panel with 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. So one of the side panels is sewn to the accent panel, and then I press the seam allowance towards the side panel, and then I just top stitched here. Hopefully you can see the stitching. Might not be very clear in the camera because I'm using black, but then I top stitch the seam allowance. I'm going to repeat exactly the same thing, and I'm going to attach the second side panel to the other straight edge of the accent panel. Both side panels are attached to the middle accent panel. Now we're going to mark some centers. So fold this in half vertically, mark the center at the top center, then fold this in half again, this time right sides together, and we're going to mark the bottom center here. Now we're going to be making some pleat marks, so what I usually do with my center mark is I just put some little marks to indicate that this is my center. Now we're going to make our pleat marks. It's very simple. You need 4 marks on this side and 4 marks on this side, and they're going to be 2 inches apart. And same on this side. Okay, now to pleat. It's very easy. I always pleat with the wrong side facing up. I'm guessing maybe, there we go. There you go. Okay, so I have 4 marks here, 4 marks here. In case I noticed that you couldn't really see the white very well, so hopefully you can see now. And there's my center mark. So what I'm going to do to pleat is I'm going to sew with the wrong side facing up, and I start at these marks. Now the 4 marks on this side of the center line, so these 4, I'm going to pinch the fabric about 1/4 inch pinch, and then I just fold it down, I flatten it down, and I have that pinched fabric going towards the center mark. So I repeat the same thing for these 4 marks, and then when I get to the other side of the center line, I pinch again about 1/4 inch of fabric, but this time I'm folding down in this direction towards the center. So you're always pinching and folding in towards wherever your center mark is. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and pleat these pleat marks, and then I'll show you what it looks like. So I've just pleated the first panel, and I'm hoping you can see these pleat marks. There we go. So this is what it should look like from the wrong side, and then if I turn it over, this is what it should look like from the right side. Okay, so you should have a total of 4 pleats. Sorry, a total of 8 pleats, 4 on each side. Now I'm going to redo exactly the same steps, and I'm going to attach these 2 side panels to the remaining accent panel. I'm going to mark my centers, and then I'm going to pleat the bottom edge of this panel. Okay, so both of the exterior panels are fully assembled, so now we're going to sew them together. And when we're pinning them together, so I align the center marks together at the bottom, and I clip there, and then I clip the top corners together, second, and then I can clip everything else in between. What I like to do is clip the pleats together so that they're exactly at the same location. And then you can do exactly the same thing on the second side. Okay, so I'll pause and I'll finish clipping. Okay, so the panels are clipped together all the way around, and now I'm going to sew them together. You start at one top corner, you backstitch, and then you go all the way down, and then you backstitch at the other corner. And what I like to do with the exterior, because I want my seam to be strong, I sew once at the 3/8 of an inch seam allowance, and then I do another line of stitching just about 1/8 of an inch away from that first line of stitching. That way there it just makes the seam extra strong. Okay, so I've sewn the seam twice. Hopefully you can see the 2 lines of stitching, and I'm just going to trim my seam allowance a tiny bit. Now we're not going to turn our bag right side out right away because we have to draw the lines for our for the, what did I call them? I think I called them channels. Yes, I call them channels. Sorry, I wanted to make sure I was using the same terminology as in the written version of the pattern. So we're going to draw some lines for our tunnels where we're going to be inserting a drawstring, the side ties. Okay, so you're going to be doing exactly what I'm showing you 4 times. So this side, this side, this side, and this side. So you're repeating this 4 times. So what you're going to do is from your inside seam, your 3/8 of an inch seam, if you did 2 lines of stitching like me. So you want to draw a line that is 2 inches long, and you want to start drawing it 2 inches from the top straight edge of your bag. So that is right here, and it's 2 inches long, and it's 1 inch away from your seam here. Okay, so 1 inch from your seam, 2 inches from the top, and you want it 2 inches long. Then move your ruler over, and you're going to draw a second line that is 1 inch away from the first line that you drew, but it's also going to be 2 inches long. So this is what you should have. okay? The one line, the second line. So if it helps you, you can actually write, and if you look on page 5, step 28, this is going to be the line where you're going to be sewing, and this is going to be the line that you're going to fold. Okay, and I'm going to show you how I do that in just a minute. I'm just going to pause, and I'm going to draw these same lines 3 other times, and then I'll show you how to fold and sew up the channel. Okay, so this is what the exterior shell of your bag should look like. So I have 2 lines here, 2 lines here, 2 lines here, 2 lines here. Now, the line furthest away from the seam here is your folding line. So you're going to fold along that line. Okay, until, so you just have, you don't have anything except for these 2 layers of this corner of your exterior panel. And I'm just going to, hold on, grab some clips. Okay, just going to clip this. Okay, and try to make sure that this has to be parallel to the seam here on the side. Okay, and then you're going to go over to your machine, and you're going to sew this along this line, the one that's closest to your side seam. So you're going to start, it doesn't matter if you start at this end or this end, but you're going to start and make sure that you backstitch a couple of times. And then sew up, and then when you get to the end, backstitch a couple of times. The backstitching is extremely important, otherwise your channel will come apart. And then you're going to repeat this step 3 other times. And then I'll show you what your exterior shell should look like once you've completed sewing all of your channels. Okay, so if you're looking at the end, this is what your bag should look like now. You've sewn this line, this line, and this line. So this is what it looks like from the wrong side. And I'm going to turn my bag. And this is what it looks like now from the right side, okay? All right, so now all we have to do is attach our shoulder straps and our flap closure. So I'll go get those and I'll show you how to attach those. Now, before we continue, I'm just going to install the other half of my turn lock. If you're using a magnetic snap, you're installing the other half of your magnetic snap. So what we're going to do now is, unfortunately, my washer doesn't center perfectly. It's a little bit odd. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to actually use the prongs, make sure that they're straight. Now, if you're using a magnetic snap, this is much easier. I'll show you how you make the marks for your snap. This is a bit of a strange lock. So if you're using a magnetic snap, it's very easy. That mark that you made earlier, you're just centering the mark inside the center hole for your magnetic snap washer, and then you mark the prong marks on either side. And then I am going to find my seam ripper. Here it is. And you'll also need some fray check. So I'm going to very carefully cut out the holes for the prongs of my turn lock. This is not a very sharp seam ripper at this point. Okay, and then put some fray check on the holes that you just cut. And then I'm going to insert my turn lock, but I also want to reinforce this. And my favorite way of reinforcing this is actually to use a little scrap of Peltex, which of course I did not prepare. Here we go. I'm just going to cut a small piece. And then again, I have to make holes for the prongs. And you can actually do exactly the same thing for a magnetic snap. It's not really any different. So I'm going to slip this through the prongs as well. And then I can place my washer. And then I fold my prongs in. Okay, and then if you want to protect your lining fabric, you can do so by covering the prongs and the washer with some tape. I often will take a piece of fusible interfacing and I'll fuse a piece over the entire Peltex piece. That way there everything is covered, and then it protects your lining from the metal pieces. So I will do that in a bit, but first I'll just show you how to install the rest. Okay, so I'm going to install the flap last. Next we're going to just add the shoulder straps. And when you're attaching the shoulder straps, you want to make sure that you have it where it's wrong side facing up. So if you have a spot where you see that seam, you want that to be facing outwards. Okay, and you want each end here to be just inside of the seam here, where you attach the accent panel and the side panels together, and leave a bit of the strap sticking out, like maybe 1/2 inch. Okay, and then do the same. Make sure that your handle is not twisted, so you don't want it twisted like this. You want to make sure that it's nice and flat. And then I'm going to go over to the machine and I'm going to base the strap in place with about 1/4 inch seam allowance from the top edge. Okay, so the first handle, the first shoulder strap is attached. That's what it's going to look like when the bag is turned right side out. We're going to do the same thing and attach the second handle to this side. Again, you want that seam facing up. And you're repeating exactly the same thing and clipping it and basting it to the top edge. Again, make sure it's not twisted. Okay, so I'm going to go baste that in place, and then we're going to, the last step is to attach the flap closure. Okay, both shoulder straps are attached. The last step is to baste the tab closure in place, the flap closure, sorry. And what I'll do first is find the center and mark the center here. And then I already have the center marked on this piece. So I'm just going to line those marks together. And I want the closure to be with the washer side of the turn lock facing out, because then when the bag is turned in the last step, it will be flipped this way. So if you're using a magnetic snap, this doesn't matter. You want just the snap to be facing up. And then if you're using a turn lock like I am, then you want the plate, the back plate with the screws, to be facing up in this step. Okay, so I have the flap maybe 1/4 of an inch above the seam allowance, and now I'm going to baste it in place with 1/4 inch seam allowance as well. So the flap closure is basted in place, and the exterior of our bag is done. And in the next video, we're going to work on the lining assembly.